Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Judy WT. And in a minute, I'm going to introduce my guest who will be speaking with me about creativity after MindMap. To begin with, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg. I am the director of the Psychological Healing Center and founder of the MindMap system for healing human disconnect. And tonight we're going to talk about what happens when you do the work and flow through all the panels and what's on the other end. It for some people like Elizabeth, who called in last week and very much inspired me to do the show because I talk so much about a lot of heavy topics. And let's talk about something beautiful and wonderful and what happens when the shadows of childhood wounds are processed and lifted. And so I welcome you, Elizabeth Patterson, artist and mind map worker. And I hope we could get volume for you. Let's try it. Can you?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Can you hear? Can you hear Elizabeth? We can't hear you. Yeah.
Can't hear me.
Yeah.
Unmute.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, that works. Actually, put the volume all the way up.
I don't know how to.
I think the volume came on.
Okay, you're good. You're good to go. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being on the show. And she called last week, and I was so inspired looking at her art, which we will display later on in the show. But the topic is really about creativity and processing your darkness so that you can reveal your light. And certainly Elizabeth has very impressively. Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you, because you never did therapy through the Psychological Healing Center. You picked up my book. And why did you pick up my book? How did that even occur?
Well, I started watching your radio show.
I think you have to hang up. You have to hang up the call in if the speaker's on.
Okay, then I won't be able to hear.
Okay.
I won't be able to hear what you have to say because I don't know how to turn on.
Okay, so.
But just make sure you talk into the phone so we can hear you.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
So you need for me to talk into the phone. Okay.
Yes, there we go.
Thank you.
So you can hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually started listening to the recording of the show on YouTube. So I started watching you on YouTube, and then I got you on an app. And you hadn't written your book yet. It was in process, and as soon as it was available, I got a copy of it. But I just started with the videos, watching the YouTube videos.
Wow, so really we go back a long way in terms of your familiarity with the process. And the book took me quite a while to write, and now it's there and also available to the audience in PDF form and through Amazon.com. And that is the MindMap video series that you're seeing. And obviously that comes with the book and journal, and it's a download. So nothing will come in the mail. Some people will call me and say, when is it coming in the mail? Well, it's not. It's a download and you code in. So you have been watching the show for a while. And if I may ask, why were you watching the show? What was your goal at the time?
Well, at the time, my father had recently died. Okay. And my husband and I went to the funeral, and my brother-in-law came up and told my husband in front of my two sons that he didn't belong there and he needed to leave as soon as the service was over.
Really?
Which was totally ridiculous. It was driven 14 hours to get there, and he was telling us we had to leave. And it was like, oh, great. Now that my father's gone, I don't have a family anymore. I don't have one anymore.
Okay.
And it was just devastating, to tell you the truth. And it just began to spiral down, down, down. And I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And I just was looking for something to help.
Okay.
So
you just happened on my video, and then you went into the app and started listening, and then finally I finished.
Right.
Happy to have.
I was listening to you all the time. Any show I hadn't listened to, I'd go and find it, and I'd listen to it anyway.
So I'm just curious because I'm on the other end of this. I'm the one teaching this and creating this. And when you looked at those 9 panels and the system, what were you thinking?
Well, this is something to work through, and I just did it one panel at a time, and I just worked at it until I could get through it.
Okay.
And panel 6 was really, really rough. I mean, I wondered if I was going to get through it without getting help. I really did.
Okay.
But my father was gone, so I wasn't talking to them on the phone anymore. Mm-hmm. My mother she was there, but she was already getting dementia, and it just wasn't, I wasn't getting the regular phone calls from them anymore, and I didn't have them worrying me. There was so much gaslighting and just, I don't know. Once that stopped, I just was able to do it on my own. If they had still been alive, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I just wouldn't have been able to.
Well, I'm glad that you did pick up the phone last week and reminded me to focus on something that I usually don't focus on, which is creativity, because definitely the mind map was my creative process. I had no idea that it was going to be my psychological model. It was originally called Join the Human Race, and it was a doodle, and it was a process to create a united humanity from the darkness to the light, and create interconnection and connection between human beings, healing global disconnect. And then I realized we had to start somewhere, healing human disconnect. So I'll describe the panels, and then you can go through your experience. So I want the audience to know that this is a system of healing, addressing a system gone wrong, blueprinted by multi-generations of painful parenting or lack thereof. And so if you look at the first 3 rows of the mind map, that represents how you were encoded by the past. So look carefully at panel 1, and what will you see? The light in the distance, which is what we're going to be talking about in the case of Elizabeth's paradigm shift, because she exposed a lot of light. And then there were a lot of shadows that challenged her that she had to overcome to expose that light. So in essence, panel 1 represents childhood wounds such as neglects and abuses, obviously verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, smothering, controlling, apathy, which is in the narcissistic abuse arena. And that's panel 1. And we all have some level of abuse and neglect. Nobody comes out of childhood free and clear. I just haven't met anybody who has had 0 wounds. It's would be quite a phenomenon. And then, of course, what happens out of these wounds is we react to our wounds, and our amygdala takes flight or fight, or it freezes, or it fawns, and it creates reactions such as anxiety and shutting down and all kinds of things that then encode into our psyche. And then we internalize these messages like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not important, or I'm not lovable. And these messages are endless. And in the process of the mind map therapy, we have to uncover the wounds that led to reactions that led to these horrible negative core beliefs. Now, when do people come to see me? Usually in panels 4, 5, 6, which I call the what the Freud, because the what the Freud is what we repeat over and over again because we're not healed in panels 1, 2, 3. Because of our injuries, we keep looping through and patterning and creating chaos and defenses that usually wear out over time, don't work over time, and then we break down. And so people usually come to me when they're in chaos. They usually come to me when they're far into chaos defenses and breaking down. So I see people who are in immense pain, of course, and on the brink of a divorce, on the brink of some kind of an emotional breakdown. And sometimes people have to go that far to have had enough, just enough. And then we're going to talk mostly about the paradigm shift out of this mess, which Elizabeth has attained. And I want to ask you a few questions, if that's okay with you, Elizabeth.
Fine.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you if you were discouraged from pursuing your art by your parents.
Well, up until about high school, no, I wasn't discouraged from doing it. They gave us lessons for anything we might have had an interest in doing. Horseback riding, ballet, whatever.
Yeah.
Piano lessons, that went on for a long, long time. And art. They got me art lessons several different times.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't discourage me from it. But when we got to high school, it was, you need to be concentrating on your academics.
Okay.
It just wasn't even something that I would have considered, to go on beyond at junior high, actually. So no, I didn't really think about doing that as a serious major or something like that.
So
they didn't really they didn't encourage me when the timing would have been right in order to go on and really do something with it.
Okay, so not knowing too much about your background, but we do know from exploring the psyche that when parents reward the child for doing their agenda, if you will, then the child will oftentimes want to please the parent and do what the parent thinks is the better thing, whether it's better or not. The child wants to just please the parent. So was that your case? So did you in some corner of your mind say, yes, mom and dad, I am going to put my art into the background and I'm going to concentrate on academics because mother knows best, father knows best. Did it go something like that?
Well, no, not entirely. I decided I wanted to major in music because I had an older sister, the golden child,
Okay.
was really very talented in music. And she was doing things like getting into the Euterpe Club and getting all kinds of attention. And and I thought, wow, if I can do well in music, then I'll get that kind of attention too. So I chucked the art in order to try and do the music, which I had very little talent in, and not any. It was just dogged determination for anything that I achieved in music, and it really didn't come naturally to me like it did to her. And yet she didn't really want to do anything with hers. She never thought about majoring in music, but she actually really could have, and she would have done quite well if she had.
But you wanted the carrot. You
wanted to be her. I wanted to do whatever. He was getting all of the attention. Everything was focused on her. And so I just wanted some of that glory, if you know what I mean.
Right. So music was attention. So it wasn't so much about your passion for music. Obviously you were that interested, but you were watching the golden child get all these accolades, pats on the back and
exactly.
Esteeming.
That's right.
And you said to yourself on some level, I want some of that. That feels pretty good. So
exactly. Right.
So what point?
So I ended up getting a a college with a really excellent music program.
Really?
So I got in there, and I just hated it. It was so awful. I didn't want to do it as soon as I got there. So I ended up switching my major to English.
Okay.
They did have, they had an art department like every college does, but it really wasn't very strong in painting at all, not at all. They had a pretty good sculpture program, but I wasn't interested in sculpture.
Okay.
I didn't want to do sculpture. I wanted to do painting. So I took an independent study in painting when I went through college, and I actually made a C in it. And I only learned how to do one thing, and that was to stretch a canvas. That was it.
To stretch
And
the canvas, to stretch
I got a great big picture of my painting in my yearbook. And it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing that was kind of making fun of what I'd done, you know. And I just really hated it.
Well, there
realism was just, no, if you did realism, you could just forget it, you know.
Well, there
so,
in music.
I just, for
So
me,
so
I didn't try that again. And I just English major, and I did some drama classes and loved that part. I thought that was fun. But my parents would never have agreed to anything in the drama department. Forget that. And I did want to please them. I was trying very hard to please them.
When did you change your mind about your ability to, you know, like when did you course correct into your ability?
Well, actually, I decided I would sign up for an interior design course at one of the local colleges near where we lived. And so I started working on that. And one of the requirements was a drawing class.
Mm-hmm.
And so the instructor said, you know, you can do this for a lot cheaper if you just go over to the community college and take it over there.
Okay.
So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll do that. So I went over to community college, and I signed up for the class, and it just went really, really well, and the instructor was really pleased with my work and said, have you signed up for painting next fall? And I said, no, I'm an interior design student. I'm not, you know, I'm not intending to do studio art.
Okay.
And he said, well, you really got to consider doing the painting class. He said, just one class, you can still do all your other requirements for your other work. Don't worry about it. So just take this class. So I did, and it turned out to be with this wonderful teacher, Lindsay McCulloch, and I just really tuned into her, and I ended up switching my major and doing studio art and graphic design at the same time. And I just gave up the interior design completely. I hadn't taken much.
Elizabeth, I just wanted to make a point here about how the teacher may have been just one of the few people in your life that was an enlightened witness to your talent and put a candle to your talent and said, wow, look at that. Why don't you go ahead and go this way?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes. Yeah.
Yeah, she made it possible for me to go from there to the New York Studio School. And so I got a full scholarship to the New York Studio School summer marathon program. I got the whole thing, what they did in New York and also what they did in Italy with landscape painting. But I couldn't do the landscape painting. I couldn't spend the money or the time to go to Europe and pay for my food and housing and everything, and to be away from my family for that long. It's just too long. So I just did the half of the course. But I found it really challenging, and I found it very difficult. And I just felt like I wasn't in my league, and after that, I thought, oh, I'm never going to be anything but a hobbyist. And that's all I expected myself. So I got back. I did not go back to the community college. I had 3 classes to go to finish my degree.
So Elizabeth, I just want to
fail.
focus you on, because I know the audience is very interested to understand how did the mind map help your confidence when years of counseling and even going back to college to study art did not? In other words, what turned you to start healing your childhood wounds so that you can somehow self-actualize in this department? And what just sort of whatever you want to say about it, what were you uncovering on your journey?
Well, I just realized how I was self-sabotaging,
Okay.
and I was my own worst enemy. I was doing horrible things just to keep myself from having any kind of success. And it just
like what?
Like not believing that I could be anything more than a hobbyist.
Okay.
I'd be happy to give my paintings away, but I wouldn't sell anything. I just.
So I'm gonna pop quiz you on this because you probably know the answer because you've done so much work. Is that what was the childhood injury that led to the negative core belief that was shadowing over your confidence and limiting you to just this notion that you're a hobbyist?
Well, I was born about 2 months premature. And my mother was completely afraid of me. She would not touch me. My father had to do everything for me. They brought me home from the hospital too early. I went into failure to thrive. They nearly lost me, and my mother still didn't want to touch me.
Oh,
So I mean,
human disconnect. That's a huge disconnect.
it was huge. It was. And then my mother just had all kinds of problems. She just did. And it just, there was a lot of verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
There was this one incident where she beat me up.
I'm so sorry.
And then my father came home from work, and he only got my mother's side of the story, and I got punished for not cooperating with my mother and for my clothes to get torn. They were new clothes.
So neither your mother nor your father supported you. I call that the double dungeon of darkness, where you can't turn to your mother, you can't turn to your father, you can't turn to yourself.
Exactly.
You're young and sort of helpless inside there. And so what core belief did this experience of being disconnected from your mother and not being touched by her, and the beatings, and your father not supporting you? So what
Never good enough.
Never good enough.
Just never good enough.
Okay.
So
yeah,
didn't deserve to be thing. They named me after my father's sister that my father never got along with and didn't like.
That one. So they named
right.
that sister. Okay.
Yeah. So I never could get it.
Well, I'm really, really sorry that you had to go through all of that. And then where was that point where you just said, I've had enough of this and I don't want to live this way? And then in panel 3, discovering, and by the way, I want everybody to know that she did not do the therapy with one of the counselors. You just picked up the book and did it all by your lonesome. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but I for years and years, I didn't have new input coming in. I didn't have new gaslighting coming in. It was just, it was just me and my memories. That was it.
Okay.
So it was easier, I think, because of that. If I were still in that environment, it would have been a huge problem. But my husband doesn't give me problems like that. My husband's very supportive,
Lucky.
He was my first enlightened witness. He was the first one that stepped up and said, "Hey, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you putting up with this?"
Mm-hmm. So
and he got me far away from them, which was a good thing too.
So are you no contact with them?
Well, how can I have contact with a woman who has dementia? And my father died, and my siblings, there was this divide and conquer activity going on. I was the scapegoat. I was always enemy number one to everybody. And so,
So tell me your process. Okay, so there you are staring at this mind map, and you went through panel 1, 2, and 3, and if you don't mind sharing anything that's comfortable for you to share, what were you discovering on this journey, and then maybe a little bit about the hardest part of the mind map work for you.
Well, the hardest part was panel 6, and I just worked on that and worked on it and worked on it. And I went back and looked through that chapter today, and I thought, what was it that was so hard about that? Because I remember struggling with it for so long.
And by the way, I just wanted to explain to the audience, because some people don't know what the heck panel 6 is. So panel 6 is the breakdown and breakthrough. And panel 6 is that place in the therapy where we reprocess the psychological pain that was caused. And again, I want to explain what I mean by cause. This is a multi-generational trickle down of psychopathology where parents are not healed and they pass their unhealed parts down to their children. And so in the mind map process, we go to the inception of the problem, which is the blueprint. And so when we get to panel number 6 in the work, when you get to panel number 6 in the work, it's a process of really releasing the pain, the betrayal, the sadness, the grief, the resentments, and I can go on and on. And this is a very, very tough panel because it involves telling the truth about really, really painful things about the people that are supposed to love you and support you and be your rock in life and have your back and so on. And people who are not fortunate enough to get this, they carry a lot of pain. And so what happens is instead of expressing these feelings, which of course they can't, because how can you express feelings to people who will not listen? Okay, and now they're gone and with Alzheimer's and so on, you can't. So what happens is we end up imploding in depression and symptoms, or exploding into anger. And what were you, Elizabeth? Were you an exploder or were you an imploder?
I guess I'm more of an exploder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I still have a real temper, and I have to watch it and say I'm sorry, because it's that part is still there, but I admit it, and I know where it came from, and I don't know how my poor husband would feel about that. I don't take it out on him. It's usually inanimate objects that I can't really but
paint in a canvas. And so in working through this mind map process and going through panel 6, which is a very difficult process, did you ever feel like you needed to talk to somebody? Did you ever think, this is too hard to do alone? Would you recommend doing it alone?
Sometimes I really, really did. But then, my father had died, and I could just sort of sit my father in front of me, and he could say, well, I'm sorry. You're right. That did happen, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yes.
just making an imaginary father who now knows the whole story, sees both parts of it, and understands the entire dysfunction. And that just sort of somehow made it better. I don't know.
So wait a minute. I wanted to understand how you process this. So you created an imaginary father, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Listened and
yeah, had died, and I just imagined him now understanding and knowing everything that really happened from the true perspective, not one that he wanted to believe just because that was the way that our family was supposed to look, you know, but to really see it what it was, and to, you know, take credit for it.
So this is so brilliant, Elizabeth, truly. You created this other father who was your enlightened witness, who was able to tell the truth of what happened, and through that creation, what happened to you.
I got better. Somehow I used to listen to you. I used to binge listen to you all the time. And then months had gone by, and I suddenly realized, I haven't listened to Dr. Judy in a really long time because I'm listening to all these painters. So I realized, oh my gosh, I think I'm well. I think I have overcome.
So
because I'm doing what I enjoy.
I'm so impressed, I can't think of a better word, of how you creatively process this. Do you recommend that people do it on their own?
No, I would not. No. Especially if their relatives are still living and they're still getting negative input. If they are still getting negative input, they need to work it through with a therapist. Okay. And I wouldn't do it alone. If there's any way possible, I wouldn't do it alone. It's not the right way to do it. It'll really do a number on you.
Look, people to know that obviously I have the MindMap video series. You could pair it with therapy. You can read the book and get help from one of our team members. And you don't have to do it alone. And so at the end of this journey, once you got through these awful truth conversations and broke through panel 6, then let's just put up the visual. There's the panel 7, 8, and 9, which is the paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is really a new way of seeing and a new way of being. And it's clear-sighted instead of the cracked lens of perception that leads us to believe that we're not good enough and that we're just a hobbyist and there's just, we're not worth it and so on. The clear-eyed perspective gave you what perspective on yourself?
Well, my perspective changed. I realized what I really liked and what I really wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And how I wanted to behave and how I wanted to live my life.
What a concept, right? What a concept.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to paint. I just wanted to paint. And so I just did. And I do. I mean, every day I just love going out to my studio and I just love working out there. It is just so wonderful.
Well, I'm really interested in what you paint. What are some of the themes that you paint?
Well, I love to paint landscape and still life. So I do both. I like to do the landscape that's right around where we live.
Look at that. That is magnificent. Yeah. That's Elizabeth's art, obviously. And there's one of your landscapes, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. And Tony, if you can scroll through some of it, and maybe Elizabeth, you can help the audience understand what you were feeling or what you wanted to express in some of these paintings with your freedom.
Okay. I can't actually see what you're putting up.
Oh, okay.
But,
Well, why don't you put up the landscape? There's one beautiful landscape with, let's see if you can access that again. There it is. It's a beautiful landscape. There's a road, there's grass, there are trees in the background. There's kind of like billowy grayish blue clouds in the background. That one, maybe a little farmhouse.
Oh, with the barn?
Yeah.
The one with the barn?
Yep.
Or,
yeah.
there's one I did a Ridge Road that you may be describing with the clouds. I don't know.
There's a road.
Everything is from home, though, and it's just, it's places we drive by all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And just, and it's just, the scenery around here is just it's just so lovely, and it's so peaceful and tranquil. Mm-hmm. And you can feel like you're a million miles away from everybody and everything.
Yes.
Not being very far from a fairly good hustle and bustle. So it's really a neat place. It really is.
So you seem so joyful when you talk about it and how peaceful it is. I wanted to ask you when, consciousness is causal. So that's the first thing that I write about in my book, Be the Cause. Consciousness is causal. And prior to this, you were coming from the consciousness of not being good enough, not being worthy, not being that. And so what would you describe your shift of consciousness to? Where did it land, or where is it now?
Peace and tranquility is where it is now. I don't feel like I have to be anybody else, or I don't have to try and please anybody else. I'm just pleasing myself, When I do a painting, I feel like I just paint it to the glory of God. I don't try to say, oh, this would please so-and-so. I'm going to do it this way. I don't do my life that way anymore either. I'm just being me. That's all I can say about it.
Sounds very free, and I want to give the audience a chance. I just want to give the audience a chance to call in and ask you any questions and ask about the mind map. So, audience, this is a call-in show, and please feel free to ask Elizabeth about her process where you'd like to be at and what you can take away from her journey and what it means for you to be free and self-express. So if anybody wants to call in and explore this process through Elizabeth's eyes and understand more about how she got to where she is, which is obviously what all of us want, is to self-actualize. Remember Maslow, right? Abraham Maslow, he talks about needing our basic needs so that we can climb the ladder and self-actualize and become who we are meant to be in our authenticity. And I think that you have done that for yourself, and no more are you concerned with the carrot that your mother is offering, or the message that you have to hunker down and get into your academics, or these things just are not even in your head anymore. So are there any calls or questions? Anybody want to call in? And please feel free. This is a call-in show. Tony, any questions in the chat room?
There's no calls yet, but let me look in the chat room. First of all, Shara Wish said, "You are awesome, Elizabeth, with your paintings." And then Always Learning says, "Paradigm shifts gives you guilt-free psychological freedom from any others who try to torment you." So more people commenting, not necessarily asking questions. So, yeah.
I think people really appreciate hearing about a, a person who has been in the places that you've been psychologically, emotionally, and struggled to say, darn it, I don't want to be here anymore. This is not, like a part of you was very healthy because you said, this is not good enough for me. This is not what I want for myself. And you had a glimpse of the light when you were in school or before when you were drawing, and then your teacher saying, wow, your drawings are amazing, go to painting school. And sure, why not? And then you really had that experience of, yep, this is me, this is me. And
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that after I went to the New York studio school, there was a visiting professor, man by the name of Ed Smith. He was from Marist College, and he was visiting the community college where I was attending. And he had really helped Lindsay to help me get into the New York studio school. And I thought he was really kind of peeved with me for not really taking advantage of that and not doing anything with it and thinking I'd just be a hobbyist afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It really made him mad, but I couldn't do anything else at the time. I just wasn't healthy enough to do anything with it. I really wasn't, and it wasn't until now, really, that I had the confidence. It's just, it had to percolate for a little while, too. It was 2016 when I first found you, and here it is 6 years later, and finally I'm doing something, But,
yeah, you're doing some great things. And this is what I call in the flow. When we're in our flow, we're aligned. If you look at panel number 7, there's an alignment there, mind, body, soul, or alignment with your vision, alignment with your art. And there's no struggle there because now you're in synergy with the people who support you. So your husband supports you, our teachers support you, hopefully the audience tonight is supporting you. And that's what I call synergy. And it is important. We're not islands. We're not made to be alone. We need each other. We're wired to connect. And when we connect with vampires, when we connect with bloodsuckers, when we connect to people who demean and devalue and destroy us because they've been demeaned and devalued and destroyed. And don't forget, everybody else has their childhood wounds. And we can certainly understand that. And yet we still are all responsible to heal ourselves. We are responsible. And I'll take it a step further. I think we are all responsible to be enlightened witnesses to others. And I think we're all responsible to be the light for others and support them in their authenticity and in their creativity. And, there's enough to go around. Just because one person has a lot and you feel that you don't have a lot, it's not going to hurt you to say, your art is amazing. How does that take away from another person just to acknowledge and esteem another human being? And if we could all be that for each other, right? Because many of us don't have parents that are that for us. So we depend on a teacher, we depend on a friend or aunt or uncle or grandmother or grandfather or a therapist or whoever is that person in your life. Those people are very, very important people because look what happened to you. There you are in this school and the person's looking at your art thinking, wow, look at that. Come on, let's get you over here. Have you ever thought of painting school? And right, you needed that. That was a big step in the right direction for you.
It really was, but I found it really hard to And to go into something like that with a teeny tiny self-esteem and really, I went in there with not much confidence, and it was so hard. But I'm so glad I did it. Oh my goodness, am I glad I did it.
Wow.
I remember the director, Graham Nixon, walked over to my drawing one time, and I just looked at him and I said, I understand what you're saying, and I know what I'm doing wrong, but I just can't do it right, even though I know what I'm supposed to do it right. And he just looked at me.
What stage?
And he smiled, said, "It will come." I thought, oh no, that's not exactly the answer I wanted. I sort of wanted him to take my brush or my pencil and just show me. No.
So
but it did come.
I'm just wondering, as it came, do you feel like, because a lot of people want to know, does this take natural talent? Do you have to practice every day? Is it, these paintings look so awesomely professional, not like a hobbyist, as you say. Does it just take hours and hours till you master this?
Yeah, but when you love it and you want to do it, it doesn't feel like it's work, It does take hours and hours and hours. But, and a lot of bad paintings too. Yeah. But just getting out there and working every day, painting every single day makes the biggest difference of anything. And all those little things that you were taught, and that little reel that goes through your head about the different things that different teachers have told you. They all, they go through your head, and then it finally clicks, and you go, oh, yeah, oh, that's what they were talking about. And you get it, but you got to do it every day, working at it every day.
Now, what isn't going through your head is I'm not good enough, and I just don't deserve this. And, that's not going through your head.
Never amount to anything, so don't bother. That message.
That's gone. Please announce your website so people can look at your beautiful art and connect with you if they want to. What is the name of the website? And maybe Tony, you can post that.
Of the website, or the link to the website is erspatterson.com. And that's Patterson with 2 T's.
ERS like Sam, Patterson.com. Check it out, everybody. And when you're looking at the artwork, remember that Elizabeth was coming from a place of not worthy, not good enough, not anything special at all. She believed that she was a hobbyist. She didn't know that she had all this light within her and these horrible negative core beliefs that are born out of childhood wounds. Once they were worked through, and once she processed her panel 6 and all of the pain and all of the anger and all of the lies and misconceptions that were basically blueprinted in her, she broke through and realized an immense amount of freedom, an immense amount of flow, an immense amount of authenticity and fun and creativity. Yeah, and you can't stop smiling because you don't have, there's no forced job here. You go out there. And I remember I said, I'll call you, Elizabeth. And you said, yeah, okay, I'll put my paintbrush down for a few minutes. And I just thought that was adorable that you're always painting. And this is, you're drawn to it. We're drawn to it.
I love it.
So for all of you who think that you are limited and not good enough and just not really amounting to anything, just take a moment to focus on who you are, what you want, what those shadows did to overshadow your flow, your light, your creativity, and take some time to work through it. You might be surprised to see what's at the other end of all of this. So I invite you to do the work, and I invite you to do it with a counselor, with a therapist, because this stuff is hard, and most people need an enlightened witness to take them through from the wounds of the past, through dismantling them and shifting out. And so you don't have to do it alone. And Elizabeth, this art is for sale, yes?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it can be off the website. When you look at the individual images, it creates a new tab. So you have to go back to the original tab and go under services. And if you click on services, then you'll see there's a little PayPal thing that comes up, and you can choose the painting by name and click on that and then process it that way. Then I'll know what I need to ship you.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. And you're painting away, and I'm sure you're producing a lot of stuff. And just again, for people to know that you can download, you can request a PDF of my book, Be the Cause. You can purchase the MindMap video series. You can purchase therapeutic services through the Psychological Healing Center. And now you can also go to the merchandise room and get t-shirts and cups and all kinds of things with MindMap product on that. So that's my creative contribution, so that people can hold it and wear it and be visual with the MindMap and remember the message and the flow of the entire process. And Elizabeth, let's keep in touch. I really want to know your flow and the beauty of your creativity. And I really, really appreciate you being on the show tonight. And thank you very, very much.
Oh, I enjoyed it very much.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night, Elizabeth, and good night, everyone. And please feel free to call in for a free consultation if you like, and just connect with the Psychological Healing Center and understand that these shadows do shadow the light and limit us. And that's why they have been called negative core beliefs, because they stop our growth. And let's not allow for that, and just keep expanding. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Good night. And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my